Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Talking Tongue, the weekly quarantine show where I get to talk to my friends near and far to talk about German movies, ? And lots of running and techno music. I'm excited to talk about the movie today, but before we get started, I have to introduce a guest that has never been on Talking Tongue, has been on several episodes of Ranked, always coming prepared with lots and lots of notes, which I'm not even surprised because right before we hit record, this guest showed me what looked like at least 2 pages of notes, which is more preparing than any guest in the 90 some episodes of Talking Tongue has ever done for the show. And I really appreciate it. My guest here today is the wonderful Geoff McBride, everyone.
Hi, Tongue.
Jeff, hello. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's actually 3 pages of notes. And
oh, my Lord.
it's some of them are double-sided, so it's probably 6.
Oh my! And it is also handwritten as well.
Yeah. Old school, always old school. Yeah.
Jeff, how have you been?
I've been good. I've been working, which is great. So that's the first time in the year that I've been on a contract doing some theater here in Ottawa.
Amazing.
Yeah, which is great. It's very weird because it's outside and people are very far away. So it almost feels like you're performing, like you can't wait for audience reaction and stuff like that. Because so that takes some getting used to. But,
I need to talk more about this because I'm super curious. For those of you who don't know, and you know, if this is your first time hearing Jeff, he's wonderful. Jeff and I used to work together at the box office of the Great Canadian Theatre Company in Ottawa. And we worked together for like a year or so. I can't remember the exact timeline. And Jeff's been in the theater community for a very long time. It's been his whole identity, I would say.
It has.
And Jeff, like the pandemic has obviously impacted theater in a big way. So do you want to talk a little bit about that, for how it got impacted to where it is now and how that all relates to what you do?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, right before the shutdown, we were just about to open a show at the Great Canadian Theatre Company that I was in, because I also act as well as work in the box office. Mm-hmm. And we did our opening night, and then the next day the show was canceled. And we all left going like, oh, we'll be back in a couple of weeks. And, you know, like we left our stuff in the dressing room. And 6 months later, I was able to go in and sort of pick up all my personal stuff that was there. And it's still, the show is still waiting. The set is still there. And the plan is to do it when we
still
go
do
back.
It. You still remember your lines?
Oh, hell no. That's terrifying. That's the next thing. After finishing the show that I'm doing now, which is, it's called Love from Afar with a Company of Fools. And it's sort of a conglomeration of Shakespeare scenes. So a lot of people out of work. And a lot of people sort of, theater was feels like we were the first to leave, and we'll probably be some of the last to go back, you know, where restaurants and stores are opening. People still aren't terribly thrilled about going to the theater. So it's been really hard on people. I've been very fortunate. I didn't ever have to apply for the CERB, but my personal circumstances are such that I'm fortunate enough to do that. Right. But there were a lot of people who relied on that for to get by.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, not a fun time. Not a fun time, but
it's all on the up and up now, right, Jeff? You got a job, you're acting again, you're doing it outside, and you say it's kind of weird now. I remember Company Fools did a bunch of outdoor shows before, but it's even more different now, is what you're saying?
Oh yeah. Well, we have to. So when we would do shows, we would be outside, and we would see audiences of up to maybe 200 to 300 people in some locations. So it was quite big, and they were quite close. So, and literally, a lot of what we do with the company is go out into the audience. The audience is always part of it. Now there's a line of flowers that demark the end of our stage, and then the audience has to be 5 meters from that.
Oh, wow.
So, and then the audience is in little there's sort of giant hula hoops. I can't think of a better way to describe them. And there's little groups of audience up to 4 in each hula hoop, and they're spread out. So eventually, it essentially takes up the same room as 300 people would, but
Okay.
but it's only 100 people. And
Have you had a live show yet to be able
Oh,
to
yeah.
test it? Okay.
Yeah. We're actually in our second week of that, and it's going really well. And we're still doing. We also go to some. We've been going to some long-term care homes and setting up in like the parking lots and their gardens and things like that, and doing again distance performances for those communities. So it's been really great to be up and at it again. But I do have to say, when we went back into rehearsal, and you pointed out at the beginning of the podcast, like, theater is my identity. Like, it was my work, it was my friends, it was everything. And when it disappeared, I was like so furious. I was like, how dare you taking my life away from me?
So dramatic, but very apt for a theater performer.
And then when we went back into rehearsal, and I went back, and I had a moment of like, you're taking my pandemic away from me. I'm used to sitting around and doing nothing and playing Star Wars Battlefront, and like, you're taking my pandemic away from me.
Yeah.
So
I'm curious about that. Yeah, Geoff, like, what did you do during the downtime periods? Was it just movies and TV and games and family?
Yeah, it was pretty much it. It was kind of weird because everybody else in the house was working. So everybody else in the house had a job. My 2 kids had school, and they would disappear. And Shelley, my partner, was still working, but she was working from home. So we would all go into our separate little rooms and do stuff. But I was just coming into my little nook here, which we call the room of requirement, and I would just sort of sit and pretend to work. You know what I mean? And then Shelley would be like, "Oh, it's time for a coffee break," and I'd be like, "Oh, great!" And but then I had to say, like, what have you been doing? You know, like,
how do you keep that from your partner? Just like, you're pretending to work, but she clearly knows you don't have a job at the moment.
Yeah. Well, and I did play. I played through Alien Isolation, which was not a big gamer, but it was sort of a story I could get behind, and that was a lot of fun to sort of figure that out. Watched some movies, read, listened to music. I still was doing distance music lessons as well, so that was kind of keeping me
cool.
busy. So,
tell me more about that. Music lessons, like what?
Well, I'm learning how to play the bass. So this is for a show that I'm coming up, and actually, I just packed because that's where I have to go after this. I have my bass lesson today.
Amazing!
So I'm learning how to play the bass for a show, and which is something I always wanted to do. And I did it in high school. I was in a band for a little bit, and I started off playing the bass. But I was also the singer, and I don't know if you know this, one of the hardest things to do is to play bass and sing. So
I did not know that.
Oh yeah, because the bass generally is always playing against the rhythm. So when you see people like Sting or anybody like that who's actually playing bass and singing as well, that's quite an amazing thing.
And you want to get to that level of Sting. That's what you're looking for.
Yeah. I got the shirt on today. I got my nice little stripy shirt on today. Which I believe is how he got his name, was the stripy shirts he wore. But no, I don't. I basically want to be able to competently play a Ramones song. I can't even say the word competently. We're the show that I'm working on with my friend Margot is about a couple of punk rockers, and so we want to be able to play some instruments.
That's so cool. I didn't know this about you, Geoff. I had no idea you were a singer, basser, all this. what's the technical term? Whatever it is.
Yeah.
And did you have to kind of start from scratch again? Did you just kind of dust off an old bass, or did you buy a new one? And how did you go about like looking for the right teacher? Or is it just like whatever music school that has decent reviews, I'll go to that one?
Oh no, there were actually a couple of I rented a bass just for a while, just to play around. And I think this was even before we were thinking about doing the show. It was just something, we had one in the house. One of my kids was playing, and I picked it up, and it's a short scale, so it's a smaller one. So I rented a jazz bass, and which is the full one, and started just messing around on that, and finding tabs on the internet and trying to play them. And I couldn't sort of figure out all of what was happening. So I started taking lessons. I took some lessons at Spaceman Music, which has a studio here in Ottawa, and that was great. The teacher and I didn't necessarily get along, which is interesting, because I think when
you're a pretty nice guy. How does that even happen? What did you say?
Not in terms of like we didn't dislike each other.
Right.
It was just like I didn't understand his teaching style, and he, I think, didn't have the patience for me.
I see.
But that's interesting to learn. Like, I think that's something when you're younger, you kind of latch on to whoever wants to, oh, you're going to teach me? Of course. But I think as I get older, I'm like, this is great, and thank you for everything, but you're not the person that I'm looking for.
Right.
Which is, I think, is entirely fair in anything you're doing.
I think that's like trying to find a therapist, for example. You got to find the right person who clicks with you, and it's okay if they don't.
Yeah, exactly. And then this was recommended. The teacher I'm with now was actually recommended by someone at the Great Canadian Theatre Company.
No way.
And this has been a much more wonderful experience. He's a very patient teacher, like very, very patient.
Very important for you, Geoff. Yeah.
And he's a multi-instrumentalist. And the wonderful thing about this is that he wants to learn to play drums. So he's not a great drummer. He's a great guitarist and can play bass, and I imagine keyboards as well. But he wants to learn how to drum. So together, we're at times learning. So like he'll get on the drums and I'll get on the bass, and we try to keep a line going. Cool. So we're both learning, and that's been a really wonderful experience.
And do you do it together, like in the same room, or is it online, or was it online and you shifted to like in person?
Yeah, it was like everything. It was all online. So we did it over Skype. Remember Skype?
What is that?
Yeah, I know. What the hell happened to Skype? Do you know what I mean? Like Skype was all set up to.
Skype was like the big thing, and then I don't know. It just got really bad. Skype was just like so crappy to use.
Yeah. But you think it would have been perfectly positioned but then anyway.
Nope, then it didn't. Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing. Anyway, we did that, and we've recently gone back to in person, but we still have to be
imagine
masked.
With online music lessons, it can be kind of weird being like, all right, lift your hand a little bit higher to get to the right chord. And like, what if your internet connection sucks? So no matter what you play, it's like, and like, it just sounds bad.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I personally, for myself, I was a drummer back in the day, like very amateur, had a band as well. Our band was called High Velocity. Stupid name. That's a
great name.
It means high speed, for those of you who need a translation for that. And then I remember buying a guitar when I had my very first very serious breakup. As we all do, we got to sing about our feelings, wrote a bunch of sappy songs about my feelings with the same 4 chords that I would learn on guitar, and self-taught myself. And then after I was satisfied and was comfortable again and not being sad, I kind of dropped the guitar. And then recently, it was actually just a couple months ago, I was thinking about, I think it might be the hobbyist in me. And a lot of people are like this during the pandemic, where you're like, I want to learn how to do this thing. You have this drive, this relentless drive to learn a thing. And only 20% of the time you actually follow through on it. So I had that for a hot 3 weeks where I'm like, I'm going to go back and learn the guitar. I want to do this like for real, get a music teacher and all this other stuff. I was looking at music lessons, budgeting it out, being like, it's expensive, but whatever. It's a lifelong skill that I could just impress people and be happy for myself. And then that fire died.
Yeah, yeah.
And I moved on to something else that's like, ooh, what is this? Yeah.
Yeah. So
But yeah.
What was the genre of High Velocity?
Oh, we played the same couple cover songs from like we were like punk rock kind of thing. We played Red Hot Chili Peppers. We played a band called Thrice, my favorite band. Sum 41, Sublime. It was like that kind of thing. We never invented our own like music together, and I didn't know how to play any other instrument but the drums. So like everyone else would like switch instruments and I'd be like still on the drums. But I was a nervous drummer too, in the way that I was very like a sheet music drummer where I was very comfortable following the rules, but very uncomfortable freestyling, which is a huge part about drumming. Because I'm like, well, what if I do a stupid drum fill and everyone hates it or it's offbeat or whatever? I'm too nervous. I wouldn't do them for the life of me. Yeah, that was my drumming life.
That's the terrifying thing. Like I'm still sometimes really stuck on the sheet music and that sort of thing, and the freestyle scares me as well. But right. I did say I can't remember who the bassist was, but it was a bassist who said it's only a mistake if I decide it's a mistake.
Good lesson.
So that's sort of sticking in my head these days is like, it's only a mistake if I decide it's a mistake. So
good mindset. I do plan on, I'm holding myself accountable. I do want to go back and try to get music. They're expensive. Yeah. What do we like? It's a lot. It's a lot of money.
It is. Yeah. It's yeah, but you got to find, don't go to the schools. You know, you can find someone who will teach you in their basement.
That's true. That's true.
But yeah.
Well, Geoff, it sounds like you've had quite a journey during the pandemic. I love the idea of you just being in the room of requirement, as you call it, and just like pretending to do productive things through the day. And then in your spare time, learning bass and I don't know, waking up your whole family in the middle of the night or anything like that. It's a great, you can write a play about that, Geoff.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Oh man. And like you performing again brings me a lot of joy because I've seen you perform here and there, and it's quite thrilling. You have a switch that turns on, and then you're like performance Geoff. You're very you project very well into the audience and stuff. And I guess it's kind of weird to me to imagine that like outdoor theater is like in those hula hoop quadrants or whatever you want to call them. And I know, because I've seen a couple of Company of Fools show where you do go into the audience and stuff like that. And not that like you're always giving high fives or lifting people out of their chairs or anything, but I would say it was pretty interactive. So it's interesting to me that like you lose part of a core aspect of what makes your show special. Not that it's not special still, but it's very interesting to have to adapt to that.
The way that they've written the show, there are scenes in between the Shakespeare scenes, and we have these very big characters. So even though we can't go out to the audience, we go out to the audience as much. Like we refer to them as the Smurfs. It's myself and Mitchell Rose and Maurice Fernandez, and we are just bigger than bigger can be, and we even got microphones on, so we don't necessarily need to project like that, but we go out to the audience that way, and it's all about trying to include them. But it feels like you're throwing a life preserver every time, you know, like somebody grab it. Like I don't know who it's for. I'm not saving you. Are you saving me? Are we saving each other? Right. But yeah.
Wow. Well, it does sound like you usually have a segment of what makes you happy during the pandemic, but I think I already figured it out. I can't wait for the next time you come on any show in the pod cavern, I'm going to get you to do like some sort of like sexy bass line to intro the show, if that's okay.
Maybe Leslie and I could work together. I can underscore one of his rank songs.
Oh, he'd love that. He'd love that. But hey, let's go into the news of the week, the pop culture news of the week, which I just pulled from IGN.com. Yep, they're just headlines. And we are recording this on a Friday, so we might miss some that come up on the weekend. But hey, whatever. Doesn't matter because listen, my first news story is probably the biggest news story pop culture wise through the week. But I'm curious, Geoff. I've never really gauged how big of a superhero guy you are. What do you think about the Marvel TV shows or Marvel in general?
I quite enjoyed the run through to Endgame and unfortunately I haven't seen anything beyond that, but I know that you have just seen a couple of things. Ooh. Or at least one thing.
You should go see that thing.
Yes, I'm dying to go see that thing. I quite enjoyed that. I started to find I went back and to catch up on stuff, and I started to recognize the formula. Yeah. And I'm not sure if this is the story that you're
I'd love to hear your thoughts, anyways. Yeah.
But I started to recognize the formula, and it's great. It works, and I enjoy it every time. I enjoy it when it goes. It gets unexpected. There's a couple of things. The Thor Ragnarok, I think, was it's wonderful when they bring people in that change it a little bit. Same with Black Panther. That seemed to shift the things a little bit. So yeah.
Well, you should definitely see Shang-Chi. Yeah, I guess if you want to see a shift. But you're right. Like a lot of the Marvels, it's one of those things. It's a common complaint, and I totally get it. I don't think every movie's the same. I think they try to be their own identity, but of course, it's kind of part of this bigger universe umbrella thing. There has to be the DNA of the Marvel thing in it, and if you don't have a little bit of that formula, then what is it really? I guess you might end up with something like Venom, which I think is just trash, in my opinion. But anyways, the Marvel news story that I want to bring up is there's Marvel TV shows coming up and all this other stuff. And we've gone through so many this year. And the last one is Marvel's Hawkeye. And there was a trailer that dropped. And, Hawkeye gets a lot of flack. I get it. I'm one of those people who always votes for the underdog, no matter who they are. And I'm like, I like Hawkeye because I like to be different. But did you see this trailer at all?
I didn't. And you know what's difficult about the Hawkeye, though, is separating Hawkeye from Jeremy Renner.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Tell me more. Yeah.
Well, I just don't find him. I think he was an engaging actor. And through the series, he just looks like he's so bored. And I know he's supposed to be tortured and everything. And he had an interesting storyline, especially towards the end. But he just looks like
he's just going through it.
He just doesn't want to be there, man. So, but yeah. So is he the TV series or is that?
Yeah, he got a TV series. So hopefully he has. I agree though. Like as much as I root for the underdog, I do feel like they didn't give him. They try every now and then to give him like more personality and arcs to his story, but. They are clearly more invested in every other Avenger than him. So this is the first time that they're giving more time to him. And I won't get into like what this trailer is or any of that besides the fact that it's a Christmas show. Yeah. So that's when I'm like, okay, Marvel's doing something different. And the reason why they really lean hard in it. Like the whole trailer is just like set on Christmas. They keep talking about Christmas. They make jokes about like it all being wrapped in a tight little bow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I love the idea of a Marvel Christmas show, I guess.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I missed. We don't have Disney, so I'm not seeing that in the new Star Wars stuff. Which, I mean, you want to talk about formula. I'm a big Star Wars guy, so that's I can't comment on any other franchise's formula. But WandaVision looked really interesting too, like that.
I mean, Geoff, now that you're making the big bucks doing the acting again, because I know how actors make a lot of money.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Disney Plus, not that expensive. There's a
Yeah.
lot of good stuff on there. And now there's Reservation Dogs on Disney Plus, which is
Yeah.
the Taika Waititi produced FX show. Anyways, doesn't matter. My next title or pop culture headline is there is a. Did you ever watch She-Ra or He-Man growing up?
It was a little late. It was sort of coming on as I was moving out of my animation phase. But I remember. I remember by the power of Grayskull. I remember.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, and She-Ra was very, very, very popular in the cartoon or animated thing, and I never watched it to be honest with you. But again, such big popularity, they're now going to a live action She-Ra, and I think that's kind of cool.
Oh, I have a child who is going to be so excited about that.
Who do you
Uh,
want live action She-Ra to be? And I just picture Lucy
oh,
Lawless still
yeah.
in a blonde
It,
wig.
it's hard to think of anybody else that could do that. Oh, who could that be?
Who could
Who
that
would
be? I
be?
don't
Who is?
know.
It's going to be somebody that we don't know yet, right?
You know
Like
who
I
can
think.
be is I hope I'm saying her name right. Hannah Waddingham. She
Oh,
is the actress from Ted Lasso, and I think you've seen Ted Lasso, right?
no, I haven't. Sorry. No, I
Whoa,
know. I know.
Jeff, you've had a whole year to watch stuff in your room of requirement. Spend a little less time playing your bass and watching the good television that's come out in the last year.
I know.
Okay,
Uh,
well, if you ever Google an image, you know what? Don't Google an image until you watch the show. Go watch Ted
okay.
Lasso. I can't
Okay.
believe it. I'm very disappointed in you, Jeff.
I know. I know.
That's
I'm
crazy to me.
I'm disappointed in myself.
I know it's another thing you have to sign up for. I get it. I get it. But, again, you make so much money.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
All
Just
right.
I'm like Scrooge McDuck here, diving
It's
in my
it's
my
it's
gold.
very frustrating seeing you swimming in money in our Zoom call right now when I am clearly in a basement that it kind of smells. Okay. All right. The next news headline that I have for you here is that, let's see, Nicolas Cage says he will never, ever retire from acting.
Oh yeah,
And is that okay with you?
absolutely.
You're a
I
big
think
Nick guy.
I think he's just starting. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, his journey is so incredible, um, uh, and he's just he just chews scenery. And I love that kind of. That's the kind of actor I am, and I love that kind of actor. And that's also my retirement plan, despite
Okay.
all the money that I'm swimming in. Right?
Yeah.
I can't ever imagine. I can imagine sort of changing how I approach acting, but I can't imagine like it's not something to retire from.
Okay.
It'll find you, and yeah, good on him. And I'm looking forward to. I'm trying to remember the name of the new the Ghosts that just kind of came out of nowhere. It's opening at the Mayfair this week. I can't
Okay.
remember
It's a new Nick
the
Cage thing.
yeah new Nick
He's
Cage
been
thing.
in like 4 films in the last year. It's
Yeah, yeah.
insane.
And this was surprising. I remember because the poster appeared, and like even people who were movie people were like, "Where did this movie come from?" So there's that one, and I still, to my shame, I still have not seen Mandy or the pig,
Oh, yes.
who
Pig
was
is the
just
one
in
I
the
want to see.
yeah
Mandy's weird.
yeah
Mandy's weird.
yeah.
I'd be curious to what you have to say about it. It's like, I hate half of Mandy. I really like the other half of Mandy. That's my review of Mandy.
That's fair.
Like, almost turned it off amount of hate for Mandy.
Oh, really? I know it's difficult to watch. I understand, but
Yeah,
I
it
understand.
really seemed like a snooty, well, you gotta know the art. Like it's very artsy, artsy, artsy. And then all of a sudden it's like revenge. And you're like, wait, what? What's happening? And blood and everything. So I like that part of it. Last news story before we get into our movie of the week here is I'm only bringing this up because I don't know this film, but Jeff, you've been acting for so long, you must know this film. Flight of the Navigator.
Oh yeah,
Okay, I knew. Okay, how I'm only looking at the poster, and this film poster looks, I don't know, very old.
yeah.
And
is that the? It's an. Is this the Australian one? Is that the?
It's the one with a 12-year-old boy named David who was abducted by a UFO and wakes up 8 years later without aging and no recollection of what occurred.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, I do. I vaguely remember that one. Uh, I think I'm confusing it with another film called The Navigator, which was
Oh, I see.
which is an amazing film about this village. Like it's set in. It starts off in the Middle Ages, and they're worried that someone has brought the plague to the village. So a bunch of them go up to this mountain to quarantine, and they find this tunnel that takes them through to modern day Australia. And
See,
they have
that
all
sounds
these,
cool too.
yeah. No, it was really cool. And then anyway, that's a good one. But Flight of the Navigator, I remember that movie coming out. I probably saw it, but I don't. It doesn't.
Doesn't. Yeah. Okay. Well, with that premise, are you excited that Bryce Dallas Howard is directing a remake of this very old film? What do you want? What is this? Why do they need to make a remake of this film? What is so interesting about this premise?
I don't know, man. I don't know. I think if I remember correctly, that was sort of like it was sort of a because Close Encounters of the Third Kind was a big thing, like the child getting abducted and alien stuff like that. I remember that being quite a big thing. So I think that was sort of a knockoff.
Okay.
So I don't know why you do a knockoff of a knockoff, but I mean, whatever. It's funny that people won't they'll go to see a remake of a movie, but they won't go to see the movie. Like if you re-released Flight of the Navigator,
right?
People won't necessarily go and see it. But if you do a remake and put some people in it, they'll be like, okay.
This is a good one.
Now it deserves my attention.
And they love the new one, and they're like, hey, the old one's on Disney, and they're like, nah, I already saw the new one. Why do I need to see the old one? Yeah, I get that. That. Actually, I have one more news story that actually bleeds into something you said earlier, which is Denis Villeneuve, who directs Dune, and that's coming up real soon. Yeah. Sounds like your buddy, because he says, Dennis says too many Marvel films are cut and paste.
Yeah, that's the one that I thought you were referring to. I saw that just before I came on, that he said it's turning us all into zombies. Is that
I'm not sure if that's the thing, but
there was another quote.
I'm too close to it. Too close to it. I would be like, fuck you, Dennis. I love your movies, but I hate you.
Yeah. But it's the game that people play. Like, does he have a large film opening soon that needs some attention? Perhaps. I feel like a lot of media these days does that, is like negative attention. Well, yeah, we've seen that over the past few years. It's like negative attention is as good as good attention, if not better, right? Like,
do they need that? I guess so. Like, to me, as a film guy, Denis Villeneuve is pretty big, doesn't need promotion for Dune. Seems like a lot of people are going to go see it. It looks fine. Like, I'm going to definitely see it. I love the imagery, and I love how Denis produces a film. I don't always love his films full cloth, but I'm going to see this.
Yeah.
But it just seemed to me there was already a positive buzz behind Dune. Did they need more? I guess more doesn't hurt.
I guess more doesn't hurt. And there was Mark Scorsese said something about the Marvel universe too. And I think and then he backtracked on that, because movies are movies, and you're going to go and see stuff I
mean, I would agree. Not every movie is. It is definitely a can of worms. We'll get into it actually with our movie today, because that's also a different can of worms in terms of this is a different kind of movie. But before I get into that, there is something that came up today that I just thought of, and it's not an IGN headline, but it does remind me of just kind of cancel culture. And I want to talk about that for a second, because there is some tweets going around with the actor of Shang-Chi and Kim's Convenience, Simu Liu, where he's now very popular. He's very famous. He was always liked before, but now he's obviously a mega superstar with the success of Shang-Chi. And what happened is there was a little bit of trending on Twitter where people were trying to find dirt on him from the past. all that other stuff, digging up old tweets and whatnot and all this. And they're like, look how bad he is. He's sexist, his misogyny, he's harassed people and all this other stuff. And you kind of look at it and you're like, well, some of this doesn't line up. Like how much is taken out of context and all this and whatnot. And there are people making threads on how bad he is, but then there's the counterpoints of actually, if you look into this, he's not saying anything bad for the most part, but this was also like 8 years ago or whatever it was. I guess my question to you, Geoff, is like, it's just top of mind of me of just like, wow, it must really suck to get famous overnight or get famous in general, because no matter what you do, someone's going to be digging into something you said like 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah. I live in terror of that. Like, I would never want to be famous. People often say, like, like, why are you going to Hollywood when that sort of thing. But being famous just terrifies me. Like, I love being part of a community where I can say hello to people and that sort of thing. But I could not bear the scrutiny that people go through. And as much as it's a machine that churns out the films, there's also an industry in bringing them down. You think about like the things that's happened around this film, the Shang-Chi, and the Captain Marvel. People who I saw some stuff about people who were posting headlines about how the film had failed in its box office weekend, but it's one of the highest grossing films that Marvel's ever put out. But there's just a whole bunch of fanboys who are like, it's not something we've seen before. It's not something we're comfortable with. So we're going to take it down, and we'll dig through Twitter and we'll dig through whatever we can to make it seem bad. And that's just a shitty way to live.
I know, it breaks me. And I think there's a level of accountability that people should have, especially, if it happened in the past and they were shitty people, I get that. If you own up to that, and if you've grown over, let's say, a number of years or so, and you're no longer that person, I think that's okay. If you acknowledge that part of yourself and make the right apologies and whatnot, like, that is okay. We've all done shitty things. I can't even imagine. I'm also a person, a big attention seeker. And I sometimes fantasize about like, well, what if I was like famous one day? What if I like made it into like a giant TV show or whatever? And then I think about all of the such immature, shitty things that I said for attention or what I thought was funny at the time. And if that was dug up from Twitter or Reddit or whatever, I'd be done because I didn't know better.
Yeah.
And I think that there is no perfect human being, and there's no way on this earth there's someone that has like this entirely clean track record of never, ever saying anything offensive,
Yeah. No, and you're right. It's as long as I always feel like if people demonstrate that they're generally understand that what they said or did was inappropriate or offensive, and that they're making an effort to move beyond it, that's great. But if it's the people who are like, "Oh, I'm so sorry I said that. Here's another terrible thing."
Yeah, like those people. Yeah, yeah, those people. Like, all right, I'm not going to defend those people. I just think that like, why do people just obsess over canceling someone the moment they're famous? It just drives me. Don't you have anything better to do? Learn the bass, for God's sake.
But I think that's some transference, right? Like, not to get too psychological into it,
Sure.
but I think that's just being, it's not me.
Yeah, absolutely.
People. So why is it you? But as you say, like, we've all done shitty things to people, and it's
all of us. And so let's go ahead with that in mind, unrelated. Let's talk about a movie. And I say that because, oh boy, I was not expecting this week. So Geoff, how about you introduce the movie, give me the kind of cliff notes of what it is, and then why you chose it.
Sure. This week I chose Run Lola Run.
Lola, alles in Ordnung?
Nein.
Which is a film by Tom Tykwer, and it was made in 1998. and it's a German film. It runs at 81 minutes long, but so much happens in it.
Oh my God.
And
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to spoil it. So if you
We
haven't seen
will.
this movie, and you want to see this movie, stop listening now. Go watch the movie and then come back.
Yeah.
What happens? The film starts off running. Ha ha ha. With we have our two main characters who are Lola and her boyfriend Manny. And Manny is a bagman for a crook, and he just was returning from dropping off some cars and receiving the cash for these cars, and it's all pretty clear that it's criminal activity. And Lola was supposed to pick him up, and she missed it because her moped got stolen. So Manny took the subway instead, but then left the bag of money, which is 100,000 Deutschmark, so a lot of money.
How much is that in Canadian dollars?
Oh, I saw that somewhere because you have to do the calculation to what it would be in euros.
Oh God.
I think it's over. It's close to. I think I saw somewhere it worked out to like close to $700,000 or something.
Oh wow, that's way more than I thought it was. Okay, yeah. All right.
Yeah. So he leaves the money on the subway, and the money gets picked up by a homeless man. Now Manny was supposed to drop the money off with his boss. He has 20 minutes to come up with $100,000, and he calls his girlfriend Lola for help. And basically, that is where the movie begins. And then it follows essentially Lola's run through the city to try and get $100,000 and save Manny. And it seems like a pretty straightforward premise, but about 32 minutes in, boom, our title character gets shot in the chest.
So, yeah. That's definitely a spoilers, but that Geoff already warned you. So what are you doing here if you haven't seen the film yet? Yeah, shot in the chest. Insane.
Shot in the chest. And then what happens is the day starts all over again. So, and Lola goes through almost the exact same thing and changes her approach to some of the challenges that come up, trying to get the money to Manny. So one of the things I was like, I don't know how to classify this film in terms of like, is it a thriller? Is it just your caper movie? Is it a sci-fi thing? Is it a time travel film? Is it a comedy? Is it? And it's all of those things. And it's essentially, I love sort of in the reading about the movie that I did. It's a movie about a movie, and it just like basically sets up the parameters of like, we're going to tell you a story, and here we go.
Yeah.
And it's never anything but storytelling. And I think that's one of the reasons that I like the movie is it actually reminds me of a theater piece. Perhaps.
Okay. Why did you decide to choose this film? Because, I presented you can choose any film you want. And Geoff being Geoff, overprepared, just said, well, here's like 40 films. Not actually. Here's a lot of films and why I like them. And
that was my edited list.
And it gave me like a 3 or 4 word like summary of like, this is why this film rules, this is why this film rules. And then kind of like I couldn't get to Geoff right away, so he was kind of talking to himself a little bit. He's just like, you know what, I can choose this one. No, this one. And then it ended up being Run Lola Run. Why did you choose this film?
This film has stayed with me for a very, very long time. I saw it in 2000, and it's you have experiences, and they're very much of a time and a place. And if I'd experienced this, which relates to the film a little bit, but when I saw this film, it was actually on a double bill with Memento. So Christopher Nolan's Memento. So that was the evening. I think we started with Memento at Run Lola Run.
That's a crazy
second
evening.
Feature, yeah. And it was a total crazy evening. And I had just moved. I was out east. My partner Shelley was out west, and we hadn't seen each other in like 8 months. And we moved to Toronto together. So we re-met in Toronto, and so I was very disoriented anyway. Like I'd come from Halifax, and I was suddenly back in Toronto and in a place I hadn't been before, and seeing a person that I hadn't seen for a few months, and then we go and see this movie.
Wait, that's the first thing you did when you re-met with each other is go see Run Lola Run? Let's go sit in a theater and not talk to each other for an hour.
Well, it wasn't the first thing it did, but it was one of the first adventures that we had together, sort of in our new life. And so I related to the film, both films, on the sense of like, am I where I'm supposed to be? And I don't even know what that is. So, and just visually and the sound of the film is so striking.
Oh my God, yeah.
That I don't think the first time that I saw it, I don't think I took a breath for like 81 minutes. But that's not true. There's the pacing of the film is such that it gives you a chance to take a breath every now and then. But it was just exhausting to watch. And I'm not quite sure what I saw when I watched it. And every opportunity, I own a copy of this on VHS, and I own a copy of this on DVD. So I've seen it a number of times, and it just visually has stayed with me. And the more I learned about the film, the more I enjoyed it. It bears up to several watches. In fact, it's how you understand the film, I think. Yeah.
I think so you suggested this film. I had no idea what this film was, but what I love about Talking Tongue is if we're not watching anything like that's new and modern, like in the theaters at that time, someone always throws me a curveball of like, here's either a film that I really, really love, or let's watch a film we've never seen together. And this is one that you really love. So I was really excited because you have an emotional attachment to it, but I knew nothing about it. So as soon as I started watching it, I'm like, oh my God, it's a German film, because I had no clue that I was watching a subtitled film, which is, I love watching foreign films. I think that you always get like a new perspective on filmmaking and storytelling when you see films this way. I have no problem reading subtitles. In fact, I a lot of the time just watch stuff with subtitles anyways. It helps me understand what's happening because I have a hard time hearing dialogue sometimes. And when I was watching this film, which by the way, I went to ctv.com to watch this film, which is wild. I didn't even know that was a thing. You just go to ctv.com and there's a list of movies you can watch. And it just has the CTV like watermark on it. And you watch the film and there's no ads or anything.
Oh, cool.
Weird. And yeah, this film was insane. It was relentless in the like kind of, you're talking about the music earlier, like that techno. We were kind of joking about it earlier. It is like, it's a lot. It's a big driving force in this movie. And they don't kid around with the title Run Lola Run. There are so many shots of running in this film. She has to book it.
Yeah. And she is the actress who plays Lola is Franca Potenta, who some people might recognize as Jason Bourne's partner. She was in the Bourne Supremacy and the Bourne Ultimatum. They kill her off in the second film at the very beginning.
Whoa, no way.
Yeah. So, and she's been in a bunch of stuff. She was in an American Horror Story as well.
Oh, cool.
She was I read she was a 2-pack-a-day smoker and not a runner. And she says, I will never be a runner. And they said that you could run, they would give her running shoes for the shots where they were shooting her from sort of where her feet weren't in the shot. But they didn't like the sound that the shoes made, or she didn't like the sound that the shoes made. So she just wore Doc Martens and ran and ran and ran. So,
and she runs fast. At least that's what it looks like in the film.
Yeah. And that's, basically that's what she just runs from place to place to place to try and find this money. And
I really liked I'm always a sucker for like, it's not exactly Groundhog Day per se, but like you do start over from a certain point and you don't run through the exact same scenario, it's kind of like, yes, it's the same setup. Still got to get $100,000 in 20 minutes, which is wild. Not only have to get it, you have to get it and deliver it in
Yeah.
20 minutes, which is like, what? No way. There's no way. But, anyways, she's doing it. And as it progresses, we see some really cool creative decisions in the movie, which is along with like just the great camera work and the music and stuff. You get like animation, like a really gritty and messy animation, cartoon style going on, which I thought was a nice little touch to the film.
Yeah, it's really it's very interesting because there's the cartoon style, and there's also, if you notice, they have black and white, so everything that's a memory, everybody that's recounting a memory is in black and white. Lola and Mani's world is very high definition, but all the secondary characters, all of their stuff is shot in this low definition. It almost looks like a video, like a grainy video.
Pick that up.
Yeah. So, and then you have the animation on top of that. And what's fascinating, because I was curious about this, and so because I get curious about things like this, and mostly what it was, the thing that I love about this film that I learned about it is, it was, so the company that made it, the X Films, which is a cooperative of Tom Tykwer and a couple of other filmmakers. They were making movies and they were in debt. So they needed to make a movie really fast and really cheap in order to cover their debt for their the two other projects that were in the pipeline. So they were like, okay, well, they got some funding from a television studio to make this thing, and then they had to make it as fast and as cheap as they could. So my theory is that the animation, even though it's extremely effective, is that it would have been too expensive to get the sort of the spinning down the staircase that they wanted to do, that they just went with animation.
That's interesting because there's also like a dog in the shot that has to play a small minor role. You have like someone tripping her down the stairs, but you never see that person in real life. It's just the cartoon version of it.
Yeah. And it's fascinating too, because that shot, which is her leaving her apartment and her mom calling after her, and her mom always says the same thing. So it is a little Groundhog Day, but that chase down the stairs changes every time. So at the first time the dog barks at her, the second time the kid trips her, the third time she leaps over the dog and barks at it. It's just, so I can imagine that would be quite expensive to shoot, and to shoot it in the way, and you wouldn't necessarily get that in live action.
There's also a really cool stylistic choice that I thought was just genius, which was anytime she kind of softly interacted with like let's say a secondary character, you would see in a series of what looks like Polaroids or camera shots their life. And it's crazy. So it's like, I touch Geoff, and within that moment they spend like less than 10 seconds showing me Geoff's life from whatever's happening. He could be like, okay, in this one scenario, Geoff ends up getting into a car crash. But the next time we do the loop of the Groundhog Day thing, the next time I, touch Geoff, maybe he won the lottery or something like that. And it's just really, really interesting because none of those events play anything into what's happening with Lola, but it does color the world and different scenarios that are happening.
I love that so much. That's one of my favorite parts of the film. Just the fact, and I because I'm fascinated by the idea, like the small things matter, right? Like the way you can, as you say, it can be just a touch or a not, because her interaction changes. Like I'm thinking of the woman with the baby carriage.
Yeah.
The first time she runs into her, the second time she just kind of misses her, and the third time she doesn't go near her. I mean, she just runs past her. But and each one of those scenarios is very different. Like, as you say, like the first one, I think she descends into, the woman descends into alcoholism, and her child is taken away from her, and she steals a baby. That's her fate. The second time they win the lottery.
Yeah.
And the third time she becomes extremely religious.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy because there's so much to pick up on, and it's it's definitely not a background movie because you kind of have to like pay attention because as it's happening to you, you're like, oh my god, so much storytelling in 5 seconds, and then a little brain overload, but it's very effective on how it
Yeah.
does it.
Yeah. And I looked to there are just to give you, and again, this is an 81-minute film. There are 1,581 transitions. So that's cuts, edits, all
Whoa.
that stuff. The average shot length is 2.7 seconds.
Wow,
Yeah.
fun.
So that's a fantastic. That's also the editing in this film is the editing and the sound. The second time that I watched it, the first time I just watched it on TV. The second time I put headphones on and I watched it on my small screen, and the soundtrack is amazing. Like it was always amazing, but it's even more amazing when you've got it in your head. And
Yeah, my heart was beating like way too fast as I'm watching. It reminds me of like the uncomfortable soundtrack that you would get from I was thinking of like Uncut Gems a little bit in the way that like that movie always has like this soundtrack that's also relentless where it just doesn't let you go and things are happening and it's like ding, 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 ding. And in this movie exact same, and the stakes are so freaking high in this movie.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, it doesn't. And an interesting thing about how he shot the film too, and how he shoots his film. And this is you can see this video. It's I think a conversation he had at the Berlin Biennale, which is the film festival in Berlin. But he talks about he writes the music before he shoots. So when he's shooting a scene, he's shooting to music like he's already in the editing room and thinking about how it's going to go with the music. And he talks about it's really fascinating. He talks about how a lot of contemporary films shoot to an established score already, so that when they go into editing or when they go into their own music creation, they're like, make it sound like. And the example he used was the American Beauty soundtrack. Apparently, everybody was shooting to the American Beauty soundtrack for years. And then people would be like, make it sound like American Beauty, but it can't be American Beauty. So his thing is, I'm going to shoot to my music and then edit to my music. And he talks about how that totally changes how you make a film. So it's a fascinating conversation.
That is fascinating. I'm so glad you always come in with these facts, Geoff, because like I clearly did not do this research beforehand. I really like in the third scenario too that they as the scenarios go, you get to know the secondary characters more, but in like a different way, especially in the third one where you see like the homeless man, for example, you see the people that the guy who's riding the bicycle, all the macho dudes in the car that come out of the car, and you get to spend more and more time with these secondary characters as the movie progresses, but in a different way. It's not always the same, right? And I think that's just it's cool. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it is really lovely how they, and again, that's the pacing of the film. I think that it's almost musical. Well, he's a composer as well, so it is almost musical. It's like a symphony. You have your big opening piece, and then you have a little interlude, and then you have a second piece, and then you have another interlude, and then you have the big the conclusion, the resolution.
Yeah.
And I think he does it so well.
So good.
Yeah.
Geoff, do you have any final thoughts on this movie?
I just love this film, and it was so nice to reconnect with it in a different way. Sometimes when you look into things and you're like, oh, I wish I didn't know that about it.
Yeah.
But everything that I've read about it, and watching it again, the fact that like I watched it 2 days in a row and I was still engaged. It's an absolutely outstanding piece of filmmaking, and I love the fact that it was made as an afterthought. And they had no idea what they were making. It went to a bidding war at the Toronto Film Festival when they opened it, which is how they were. And he talks about how like he wouldn't be where he was today if they hadn't been able to sell a film.
Whoa.
And they didn't know it was. So that's always the best sometimes when you're making art. It's the things when you're like, we're just gonna do it because we have to do it. Is sometimes
that's what pushes the creativity to make the thing. I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. Do you feel comfortable in the movie that you chose for this week's episode now that we've actually watched it? Oh yeah. Okay.
No, I would recommend this to there's so much to love about it. I thought you would like it because it's like Endgame, like it's time traveling.
It's very
it just was done with
I love this. It's just like cool concept, great execution, very short. I really appreciated that, but lots happen. And yeah, it's thrilling. My question to you, Geoff, before I get you to rate the film is, if you had to get $100,000 for your family in 20 minutes, would you do it? Or would you be like, 20 minutes? Are you kidding me? Like, that's unreasonable.
Oh, it seems so unreasonable. Yeah, I don't know what I would do. The immediate thing is rob a bank, but that's so difficult these days.
Yeah.
They don't even have money anymore. Yeah, I don't know how I could do that.
I think if Laura ever called me and it's like, I need $100,000 or I'm going to die because like I did a bunch of criminal shit. And, also in this movie, they've only been together for a year.
Yeah.
So that's like a very short-term relationship. They're not like married or anything. She's doing a lot for him.
Yeah.
And even though Laura's my life partner here, I would say like, I'm not sure I might leave you because wait, are you kidding me? I got to get $100,000. Where am I going to get $100,000 and deliver it to you? That is insane. I'd much sooner try to get to you so we can run away together.
Yeah.
Than try to get $100,000 at a casino and then get it to you. That's how I would approach it.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's one of those films like you couldn't do a remake of it. Do you know what I mean? Like in a world with cell phones or a world with e-transfers.
True.
The movie would be 2 minutes long of like, oh, okay, I bought some cryptocurrency and then I planted a story about how Walmart is going to be using the cryptocurrency. So now I have $100,000. Boop.
Even in the digital age, Geoff, I don't think you and I are equipped to gain that much money in 20 minutes.
And I don't have to worry because I'm in my vault, my room of requirement here, swimming through the gold. So
that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Geoff, how would you rate this film?
Oh, I would give this, let's give it 200 techno beats per minute.
Oh, whoa.
Let's give it 8 Doc Martens out of 10.
Wow, that's great. I would give it, I don't know. Ooh, you took my techno beat scales.
Oh, sorry, man.
No, it's okay. I would go with 12 robbing a grocery stores out of 5 being shot in the chest. I guess. I don't know. You take that as you will. Take that. I really enjoyed this film. I really would not have watched this film without you introducing it to me. So this has been great.
That's good. Yeah, I was worried after I picked it. I was like, Tuong is either going to really love this or he's going to hate it.
No, I love it. I love it. And it's just one of those films that you can kind of dive into. And I'm sure if we had more time, we would have gotten into the nitty gritty. But I think I've said exactly what I wanted to say, which is like, this is cool. This is fun.
Yeah.
Geoff, thanks so much for being on today's episode of Talking Tuong.
Thank you. This was so much fun. And I only got through like 2 pages of my notes. So.
Only 2 pages? Oh my God. Well, maybe we need to do a companion episode where you just rant for the rest.
Oh, that'll be my ET episode.
Okay. We're going to watch that together because I know you hate it. And you heard that right. Geoff hates it, but we will save it. We will save it for another time. Geoff, do you have anything to plug for the people at home?
Well, we're doing Love From Afar. That's a company Fools in Ottawa. Unfortunately, we only have a week left and we are sold out. So that's
bold of you to plug something that they can't even attend. But I'm glad it's going well. That's so great that you're able to sell that.
And if people are interested, they should. Our final shows will be here in Ottawa at Strathcona Park. And just keep an eye on the website there. Tickets might become available But
Cool.
if people are unable to come, but currently now we are sold out. But we'll be back.
What about an
next year.
encore show?
Yeah, that'll be. We'll see. And then GCTC, if things go back, it looks like in December I'll be doing Daisy, the show that closed, Daisy at GCTC in November, December. And then we'll see what's up in the new year. But that's all dependent. That's up to.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I want to do, maybe we do an episode of Talking Tongue where you do all of your lines from Daisy from memory as it is right now without having to rehearse. And we just see how it goes. We just see how it goes.
That would be a very, very short podcast. Talk to me in a month's time.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Talking Tongue. You can find the rest of the shows in the Pod Cavern at www.podcavern.com. Check out all the shows there, buy some merch, and use the Amazon affiliate link if you're buying from Amazon. And that's it for our episode here today. Geoff, do you want to sign us off with your world famous catchphrase?
Oh, my world famous catchphrase is, don't clap, you'll only encourage them.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.